Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the last video you watched me put together the bottom end for the engine that is going into my 1986 Opel Kadett time attack build. If you haven't watched the previous video, go watch it. It's like right there on my channel. It's not that far away. Please, so just do yourself a favor and have a look so you'll understand better what's going on with this engine. But for a quick refresh, this is a 20XE, which is a 2-liter 16-valve engine. That's pretty much it. Nothing really special going on with the bottom end. It is an 86.5mm bore, 86mm stroke, which means it was originally a square engine. It's no longer. It's got a C20 LET oil pump because that is the turbo that's going onto it, so it needs a little bit more oil pressure to feed the turbo without having any issues with that. And it's also got ARP rod bolts. It's quite obvious that the magic with this engine does not lie with the sub-assembly. It lies with, well, the turbo. That's quite obvious. But it's also the cylinder head. Now, some of you may already know, some of you may not. These 20XE heads were designed by Cosworth. It basically came along in the late 80s when General Motors Opel had a very mediocre 2-liter 8-valve engine and they wanted a bit more for motorsports purposes. They then rang up Cosworth, who had been doing similar stuff for Ford for many decades, and they came up with this. This is in itself a really well designed head. On the intake runners, if you're clued up with Nissans, you can almost compare these runners to an S13 SR20 in that, well, that's just a straight shot to your valves. In fact, the Cosworth designed 20XE heads actually outflow and outperform the Lotus designed Ecotech series of heads, which would later replace them. They are brilliant, they are great. I have seen people rev these engines to 10,000 RPM on stock heads. Stock cams, stock springs, stock valves, everything. Doubt those engines are still living or alive or intact, but they did do it for at least a brief moment. In fact, the only thing to ever really go wrong with this head was accountants. At some point, General Motors accountants figured out that Coscast, who originally manufactured those heads, sort of Cosworth's in-house foundry, was a bit more expensive than Kolben Schmidt. Kolben Schmidt, however, was a bit cheaper for a reason. Just to clear things up, this is one of the inferior Kolben Schmidt General Motors heads. You know that because it's stamped General Motors and because of the Welsh plugs. It flows and performs identically, but they are known for having porosity issues. They literally sweat and perspire like a person. If you're lucky, which so far I have been, it only sweats to the outside. But if you're one of the unlucky few, it will actually sweat in between the water and oil galleys and contaminate one another. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. That's not stock. The mating surface has been decked quite a bit, so I will win a bit of compression back. It has also been gas flowed, so that's a port and a polish, as well as a 3-angle cut on the valves and valve seats. Enough yapping now, it is time to get to the meat and potatoes of this video. Which means it is time to turn this into an engine by putting the head onto the block, revealing the final engine modification I will be doing, a set of ARP head studs. Very important first step is make sure that's not plugged in. Very important first step is make sure that all of your holes where your head bolts or head studs will go in are clean and free of any sort of fluid or debris. I am extremely excited for these because, same as the rod bolts, not only do they bring the benefits of being an ARP head stud kit, which increases the things it will increase, it also eases in installation. Because fun fact, the ARPs have a much simpler torque sequence than the OEM rod bolts and head bolts. Small thing to keep in mind if you live in a country that uses the metric, aka the correct system, is that ARPs use cheeseburger measurements, so you will more than likely have to go and buy tools. Luckily, I had a set of Imperial Allen keys in my toolbox already. This is a 3/16 of an inch Allen cap that you can use to install your studs. Remember to read your instructions. An engine is basically just the most expensive Lego set you'll build in your entire life. And for the ARP head studs, the instructions are hand tight into the block only. You don't have to use Loctite, but you can. Something like Loctite 272 if you want a more permanent installation. I did not do that. And I did forget to mention this. Before you do anything, make sure all your dowels are in place. 20XE has 2 of them. They are super easy to lose. In fact, I have lost one of them. That one to be specific. I forgot to check this ahead of time. Not only make sure that your dowels are in place, but make sure that they are correctly installed and completely level, because that will screw you around. Ask me how I figured this out. And then once you have checked everything else, make sure that this surface and your head surface is completely clean. And then you go ahead and grab a multi-purpose automotive grease and start lathering this all. I'm kidding. Do not ever do that. Then simply slip on your head gasket as if it is the first time you are doing so. Make sure that all of your oil galleys and water galleys line up where they need to be. Make sure it is in place. And then go grab the most expensive parts of your engine and plop it on.
In case you're wondering why I didn't make sure that the engine was at top dead center before installing the head, it's because that I know for a fact that in the current configuration, this engine is a non-interference engine, so the pistons will never ever under any circumstances make contact with the valves. But
It's resting
it is
on
good
the
practice to just make
dowels.
sure that your head and sub-assembly are both timed up to TDC before doing this.
I see what I've done. That is why the dowels are important. Because sometimes you are like me. And when I say you are like me, I mean you're incompetent. And you try to put your head on the wrong way around. Come on, where are you? There we go. Yeesh, those head nuts are gonna suck to get into place. I guess at least I don't have to take the cams out, but oh, that's a tight spot. Now, you grab a baggie, put some grease in the baggie, then put your washers and nuts in the baggie, get them all riled up and lubed up, and they'll be ready for installation. Some of you may already be aware of this, but the reason for the ARP graphite lube for fasteners is so that when you go and torque down your bolts, nuts, studs, whatever the hell, you get a true torque reading on your torque wrench. Friction will influence that reading, and this graphite grease basically eliminates friction from that equation. Time to see how dexterous I am exactly. I know my fingers are not going to fit there. Different plan. Hot tip, before you go and put the nuts, bolts, whatever on, make sure your socket fits. It does. Typically you have very little space to work with. On the 20XE with the stock head bolts, we actually have a machined down modified socket to fit into the head. Luckily, this one works right out of the box. I did have to specially source it though for these ARP head nuts. Alright, I just took a second to read up on some stuff and research some other stuff. If you ever find yourself doubting anything while building an engine, don't just charge ahead. Consult the internet, consult the forums, read your Haynes book if you have one. If you don't have one, get one. They are really, really helpful resources. And if that all fails, maybe consult someone who may or may not be a little bit smarter than you. In this case, sbdmotorsport.co.uk have a very helpful PDF on torque specs as well as your head bolt tightening and loosening sequence for both OEM and ARP fasteners. So I'll be using these instructions to fasten these head bolts. I say once again, follow your instructions. First of all, follow the OEM head bolt tightening sequence. Then you want to work your way up to 80
foot-pounds
of torque in 3 stages. 80 divided by 3 equals 26. So that would be 26 times 2 equals 53 plus 26.6 back to 80. And what you want to do is round up and round down. So 27 Newton meters, 53 Newton meters, 80 Newton meters.
Hello, editing Ruan here. The instructions call for 80 foot-pounds of torque, not 80 Newton meters. I don't know how to talk.
Quick intermission before I do the third and final stage of torquing on this thing's head. Head gaskets. This is a multi-layered steel head gasket from a Z20 LET, also known as an OPC VXR engine. This would have been from the later Ecotech series of engines, and well, it is superior. So why am I not using this and instead using an OEM composite gasket? A few reasons actually. We ran out of budget when it came to buying internals. Forged internals, that's rods and pistons, would have been 30,000 South African rands. That's a lot of money. Also, for my first time building an engine, do I really want to spend that much on the engine? I don't think so. Second reason, this is an old school style turbo build, which means it's OEM rods and pistons with shortened rods to lower the compression for more safety. And on that setup, it has successfully ran an OEM style head gasket for over 20 years. This engine was originally built in 2003. I am never going to boost more than 0.8 bar of boost. I run out of turbo at that point, and I will run out of car. I have an open differential, and I still need to, quite frankly, learn how to drive that car. I have the flashy ECU, Max ECU Street, in case you were wondering. I've got the ARP stuff to keep the whole thing together. I can always do cams in the future. I will need a bigger turbo, but when the time comes to do the fancy rods and pistons, I will also have this ready and wait. Ready in wait, or ready and waiting. In short, I don't plan on making more than 180 kilowatts at the wheels, and I don't need an MLS head gasket for this current setup. When it came him doing, some of you while the Haynes book calls them tappets, I need to bleed my lifters because these engines have hydraulic lifters, and this thing has been sitting for about 4 years, about 2 years outside of the car, so better safe than sorry. Also, I need to remove these caps because they need sealant put on those surfaces, which they don't have at the moment. And while I'm in here, I might as well replace my cam caps because I have a full gasket set over here, which has them included. Small issue, one thing the Haynes book does not detail is undoing the cam caps. It does not give you a sequence or any other specific information. So I'm going to do this in stages. Half turn, half turn, half turn, all of them, then full turn, full turn, full turn, or until loose on all of them, following a pattern that I at least think is quite logical. I'm going to start from the center and then work my way out. So this one, 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 and then repeat for this side plus one more. You do need to be careful. Cams are very fragile, very brittle, and if you go in willy-nilly, you might risk damaging them. When working with camshafts, be sure not to touch the lobes. They are sharp as razor blades. They will cut you. Set them down on something soft that will not score the surface, and be sure that they will not be able to roll off of whatever you put them on. I reiterate, they are fragile and they are brittle. Once the camshaft is out of the way, take a magnet and pluck them out one by one, being sure to to keep them in sequence so that you can put them back into the hole from whence they came. Now, if you're going to bleed these by means of submerging them in oil, see that line right there? Has a little oil passage in it. That is referred to as the oil line. You want that facing downwards, and you want that submerged in the oil. If you really want to be pedantic about putting the lifters back into the holes from whence they came, take a photo of the top of the head, take a photo of the lifters, assign a number to each valve, and then assign a corresponding number to each lifter. Of course, you know in which order you put them into your receptacle. That I am aware of, at least, there are two methods for bleeding hydraulic lifters. One, put in tub, put oil in tub, leave them overnight, hope they sort themselves out. What you can do alternatively, get yourself a cup that you don't care about. Then you want to add enough into the cup to submerge a lifter completely. That might have been too much. And well, I bought this quart just for the lifters, might as well do both methods at once and cover all my bases. Already I can see these lifters were dry because as they are sitting here, they're just bubbling away. Now what you can do is one by one retrieve a lifter from your oil bath, put it into the other oil bath, which has too much oil in it. Be sure to make a mess. Definitely that will improve your life a lot. Just make the biggest mess you possibly can. Bother. Scheiße. Then take something like this, a blunt-ended tool, and work it. You just want it to fill itself up with liquid and get all the air bubbles out of it, and you will actually feel it stiffen up. It's also a good way to make sure that it is still fully functioning. Alright, now that I've shown you how to do it, this sucks and it's going to take some time. I'm going to do this off camera and I will catch you up with you when this is done and I'm ready to reassemble everything. This is terrible. Hi there, it's been a few weeks. Everything went wrong. But today this engine is finally getting put back together again, which means I need to start by taking that sump off. Mostly due to my own lack of planning and expertise, this will be my third time removing the sump because this thing's crank sprocket needs to be torqued to 250 Newton meters and then a further 40 to 50 degrees, which is a lot. And the only reasonable way to do that without having the engine in the car, with the car in gear, and someone standing on the brakes, or a special tool to sort of grab onto something to effectively seize the engine. The only real way that I know of to do that is to take everything off and sprag the crankshaft with a piece of wood. Slip on the sprocket, make sure the keyway aligns. Then, very important so that you get a true torque value. Luckily I have some left over from my rod bolts. You want to put some graphite grease on not just the threads of your crank bolt, but you also want to lube up the thrust surfaces of your washer. This ensures that you get a true torque value, thus making sure that your sprocket is actually as tight as it needs to be. That sprocket right there would be right about where I encountered one of my first issues, being I didn't have a sufficient torque wrench. That is where, with South Africa hooked your boy up with a new toy. This is the mechanical 60 to 300 Newton meter torque wrench. And it is nice. As you can see, quite nice, quite nice. So I just click that and get the torque value where I need it to be. Set to the right amount. I have my E20 socket and I am about to pop this thing's cherry. I suspect this isn't going to be a lot of fun. I really hope that the engine stand has enough stability in it. Oh, there we go. Alright, let's go. Okay, the wood is wooding. Good grief! No bother. Ah! Ha! And now I need to degree it to 40 or 50 degrees. Ah! That should keep it planted. Now I can resume the struggling. Yee. Hey! Hey! 42.5 degrees. Finally! With everything back together again and the engine the right way up, it's time to start with assembly. First up being the hydraulic lifters, which I bled earlier in the video. What I did before my little hiatus is I took photos and labeled the lifters as well as the springs up top which they sit, so that just to be a bit pedantic about it, I am at least sure that each lifter goes back to its corresponding spring. Is there a reason for it? I don't know. I just think it is good practice. With that being done, I now need to make sure that the bottom end is at top dead center. You're actually supposed to use a dial gauge for this. I don't have one of those, so I'll be doing the old school trick where you put something into cylinder 1 with the spark plug out, obviously, and then you just turn the engine over, watch it raise, and then you essentially stop turning as soon as it starts to settle. Because there will be a moment in between where it goes up and where it goes down, and that will be top dead center. You want to go check there. And that would pretty much be top dead center. So, funny thing, with these 20XE engines, if you want to remove the distributor, either you just want to remove it or you want to use the C20XE style cam angle sensor, you need a new exhaust cam. Like, it just will not work. You'll have oil pressure issues and it won't be able to spin your pickup. So, I had two options. Either get C20XE cams to suit and have those cut and then have my valves extended to suit, etc, 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 meaning the head would have had to come off again and been sent away. So what I did was, these are a set of Estes billet camshafts that were supplied and cut by Van der Linde Development, and they worked out a spicy little profile for me, because the only aftermarket turbo application camshaft you can get for these engines are the Piper Cross Ah, Piper cams. I was close. Was there Piper cams fast road turbo application, which is essentially just a little stage 2 turbo for the stage 2 camshaft set for the C20 LET. It didn't quite have enough lift. It didn't quite have the amount of lift I wanted, and it was quite conservative on the duration end, and I wanted more, which is exactly what these are. They're a bit spicy. To my understanding, they're somewhere between a road and a race cam, and they were figured out exactly to suit my application, to suit my turbo, the gas flowed head, as well as the torque curve that I want. This being a flat tappet camshaft engine, it does mean that you have a bit of a finicky break-in procedure when installing new cams. So Van der Linde do supply essentially what is break-in lube. You apply that to your cam followers as well as to your cam lobes. Before I slap in the exhaust cam, on the 20XE cams, you get supplied with this little ball bearing. This is meant to go inside that oil journal right there. On the 20XE, that would typically be blocked off by your distributor. But in this case, you need to pop that in there, get a pawl, or in my case, an extension, and a hammer, whack it in so that it can sort of friction itself in place. Otherwise, it won't be too long before you wonder why you don't have any oil pressure. There we go. Note that all of your caps except this one are numbered. The exhaust side's seal cap will be the number 6 cap, and the intake side seal cap will be cap number 1. As for the rest of the caps, they are also numbered. You'll also see that, I can't show you now, the lighting isn't good enough, but you'll also see that your head also has corresponding numbers embossed into its actual surface. Then you just place each cap by their corresponding number, making sure that they are facing the correct way. The number stamped on the cap should be facing the same direction as the number stamped on the block. Another thing to note is you see that dimple that the number is stamped on? This needs to face toward the inside of the engine. In general, at least. But good practice is for you building your engine, watching this maybe, just take photos before you dismantle it and make sure you just put them back the way they came out. Even if they were possibly maybe incorrect by means of what I'm saying right now, just make sure you put them back the same way they came in. That is the most important part. Now the fun part. I need to fasten these. Fastening camshafts is quite scary from what I've seen on YouTube. Yes, they still obviously have a torque sequence, but now you've got this weird lumpy thing that doesn't sit fully even, and you need to just go nick, 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 until they're settled, and then you can torque them. Crap. Alright, so I can't put this engine together. I cannot torque the cams. This is a seal. It is the seal that sits here in this housing. This seal, just like the oil pump or the front main seal, did not come in the seal kit. I did get a complete full seal kit. Nothing was missing. It was still sealed. It's correct. They just don't come with them. So, tomorrow I need to go find one of these. Hello. It's been another couple of days, but I finally got a seal. That's all good, and I needed to give it 24 hours for the RTV to cure, because proper procedure is having the RTV cured before you start torquing everything down. For those of you at home wondering, all of these nuts, 20 Newton meters, and these two, 10 Newton meters. Camshafts are brittle and fragile, so it's important that when you're torquing them, you don't go from one end or do it randomly. You want to start just like a crank. You want to start in the middle. Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Just like that. Can you tell that I just want to get done with this now? Hi there, it's been 3 days. So a few things went down. First of all, I didn't have bolts to fasten the water pump, so I had to go get bolts. And I figured, while I can't put the engine together, let's get this cover powder coated, because everything else is powder coated. Why not make that match? While I was waiting for the cover to get powder coated, I figured, let's do some work on blue. And I don't want to talk about that right now. Do stay tuned for a future video about that though. Also, don't worry, that's not torqued up yet. I just wanted to mock it up because there's a timing mark there that tells me when the bottom end is at top dead center. I'm going to have to take it off, put the cam belt on, then torque that up. But now we can finally get onto the fun stuff, and what has been the most exciting part of this engine build for quite some time for me, this little thing. This will live right there and bolt straight to the end of the cam. This will allow me to run a factory style cam angle sensor. A cam angle sensor's job is basically to tell you when the engine is at its true top dead center. And it does allow you to get your tuning a bit more fine, get everything just a bit more dialed. I'll also no longer have a big old distributor hanging off the side of the engine. As a wise man once said, if it spins Loctite, and these camshafts will spin up to around about 7,000 RPM, so the little bolt that bolts that to the cam, just give it a little dab of the blue stuff. You probably don't want to use full strength red Loctite. I mean, it's a 10mm bolt. Admittedly, I will have to take that off later because I totally didn't just drop the unobtainable cam angle sensor, but I don't have the right bolt to install the cam angle sensor, and there's a little O-ring, a little ridge with an O-ring that sits around there. I don't have that O-ring, so I'll have to go and get both of those, but I just wanted to see how it would look. Finally, put the valve cover together. Now this is a trick that I picked up on one of Jimmy Oakes' videos. What you essentially do is you take some of this stainless steel. You got to be sure to get the 100% stainless steel kind, and you want to be sure that you get a more coarse material, because all you want to do is essentially baffle your existing inner baffle by giving it more surface area for the surface tension of the oil vapor coming through your PCV system to stick to. And after sticking to this, it will slowly trickle back down onto your valve train instead of just blowing straight out of your valve cover. Essentially, in high stress applications, this will just help reduce the amount of oil traveling through your PCV system. You don't just want to bundle it up and throw it in there. You need to spread it out a bit and make sure you thin it out to prevent any possible blockage. Not that blockage is something you need to worry about, especially with the 20XEs, because that right there is the vent that goes from your valve case to your actual inner baffle. So right from the start, there's not a whole lot of flow to worry about. I have managed to injure myself. These little strands, surprisingly sharp. Notice how I left a gap there? That is for these baffles to have a spot to exist. There we go. Now comes the tedious part of screwing this thing back together. Obviously, this thing sits right on top of your camshafts, and that is a pretty high risk place to have a screw. Unlike a lot of other engines, the 20XEs actually come with screwed in baffle plates from factory. Normally they're riveted in. So when you do screw these in, make sure to cake them down with Loctite. Don't use the red stuff. Obviously it's a screw. Don't use red stuff, but just use enough. At last, that is starting to look like an engine. Sadly, I am missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the bolts for the valve cover. Need to find those. I still am looking for some hardware on this side to mount a cover that goes over the cam belt. So I need to wait before assembling that. There's still a lot to do, but that is an engine, and it is built. As for the intake manifold, I'm first going to install the engine in the car, then put the manifold on the engine just to make sure it goes in as easy as possible. As for the exhaust manifold, well, it doesn't exist yet. I need to get one built. And I know it's a tease. I promise you it hurts me more than it hurts you. But I'm going to finish the video here. I mean, the engine is built. Engine equals built. That's good. But it is super annoying that I couldn't finish it up completely just yet. I know this probably wasn't one of my best videos, and I know it got a little bit chaotic most likely, but I do hope that you enjoyed it nonetheless, or at least that you found it a little bit informative. So, please leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.